Okay, thank you. Welcome to the Policy Committee meeting, March 16th. Lynn, has the meeting been properly posted?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. We have no public comments, apparently. Nobody's visiting us for that. And first, we have several action items this evening. First one will be the approval of our minutes from our February meeting.
I so move.
Moved by Diane.
I'll second, please.
Second by Corey. Any questions or changes on those?
No.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 3-0, Lynn.
Thank you.
Okay. That moves us into our, excuse me. We have action items. The first three are legal issues that we will be handling. First one is policy 0142.5, deals with the vacancies of a board member of the board. And
yeah, I believe last month we discussed this, and then we sought some additional language for the policy. And if you go down to the bottom paragraph, it has to deal with what happens if there's nobody in the pool who the board picks for it. And so the recommended language that we had is the appointee shall hold office. I'm sorry, I apologize. We struck the from among applicants who completed the process above. My memory is being refreshed now. And then the other language is there is about the appointee shall hold office until the following term. So,
which we've been,
that's
that
been
part
our
we've been
practice,
doing.
yep.
We've never had a situation where we had to go through this 60-day process before and a failure to find somebody. So.
Correct. It's usually
But
been selected in the first.
That's covered if we have to.
Yep.
And this this policy is up for, excuse me, for approval. So anybody have any questions or additional changes to this?
No.
I'll move for approval.
Sure. I'll move to approve the revisions to policy 0142.5 regarding vacancies as presented.
Thank you.
I second the motion.
Seconded by Diane. Any further discussion on this? We've had discussion previously, but any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor of accepting this policy as changed, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 3-0, Lynn.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next one then, which is policy 6114. This is one of those policies that deals with financials. Excuse me, cost principal spending federal funds.
Yeah, we should have captured Mr. Clark when he was here before addressing the clocks in the room. This policy is in line with our auditors and the federal language around federal grant spending. You can see the additions in green here. We did discuss this a bit last month, I believe it was, and there were no questions or recommended changes from committee members or board members on this policy.
And this one was vetted by Darren?
It went through the business office. Darren and Sherry had their eyes on it. Has their approval.
Okay, Diane?
I have just one suggested change. I'm kind of anti all kinds of acronyms that may not be necessary. And if you look to the bottom of page 2, in the period of performance, they create an acronym for the grant award notification, and then they use it once. And it's like, why?
Oh.
I had to go back. I was like, oh, what does that mean again? Because it wasn't like sunk in my mind that was an important acronym since it was listed above as just lowercase. So I'm just thinking, just get rid of an acronym and just spell it out both times. Would just be in the last sentence, just spell out, what the grant award notification is. It's just a tweak, but it's like, I'm just an anti-acronym person because it drives me crazy. I justify Edgar and some of the others that are legit, but this is like, why make one?
But do we know if it exists in any other policy?
I don't know that. Would it be okay for purposes of not knowing if it's in another policy could we spell it out and then abbreviate it again at the end of the next sentence?
Sure.
Knowing that these federal things come up
Yeah.
and the similar language is inserted in multiple places.
But just, like, there's really, I had to go back and look at what it meant, and I'm just thinking to have it spelled out there. And if you want to put it in the parentheses again, so, so be it.
So would you repeat what you were thinking of doing, Joe?
Yeah, we would just, at the end of the second paragraph, I know that it's not, used in common grammar. I'm sorry, the last sentence.
Yeah.
Where it says, for direct grants, the period of performance is generally identified in the grant award notification. We would spell that out and then in parentheses use GAN again. I don't know if this is in other policies, but if it starts to work its way in, then, I think we would want to maintain the abbreviation.
And I'm not saying to get rid of the abbreviation, I'm just saying just to spell it out here.
Sure. Yep,
There's
we
really no need to use an abbreviation in that context.
Yeah, that's a very simple correction that we can
Simple
make.
correction.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Mrs. White, you said second page and what?
Second page under period of performance is the very last word. Instead of using GAN,
Okay.
simply spell out grant award notification that you know what it is.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like they did about 3 lines before that.
Right, they did before, and then they made it an acronym, and this is the only time that they're using it as an acronym.
So you want to write it out?
Just spell it out.
That
Easy correction.
easy correction, okay.
Make sense?
I was just going to say, yeah, it's in a few sentences ahead of that. And typically when something's mentioned more than once, we do abbreviate
do?
it, but that's fine. Not a problem. I'll make that change right now.
Okay, any other changes to this? What was the number on it again? 6114?
No.
No, just being picky. So I've moved to approve the revisions to policy 6114 for cost principles on spending federal funds as amended.
Thank you. Seconded by Corey.
Yes, please.
Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor of accepting it, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 3-0, Lynn.
Thank you.
Policy 6325, procurement, federal grants and funds.
Yep, this is another one that came through the business office. It is to update language recommended through our auditors and then also through Neola. It is one of those legal updates that they make so that our policy is in compliance with what the federal government wants us to do around federal grants. You can see the bulk of the changes come under procurement methods, where they have the informal procurement methods, I apologize. And then under micro purchases, and then small purchases, there's the distinction between the two, and then the clarification, and then formal procurement method, where you start getting to higher value things.
So the federal actually plays a role in writing this, right?
Correct. The language comes through Neola, but from the federal office, Department of Education.
Okay. We had a little discussion earlier about where some of this is coming from with our students back here, and this is an example.
And then the other thing is there's the domestic preference for procurement, so essentially a Buy American clause if we can.
Yes, Diane?
That's exactly what I was going to say. When we bring it up to the board, I think it's important to mention that that was one of the additions to this policy, that it does have the Made in the USA kind of preference built into it. Because that's that'd be the main thing that would be anything noteworthy.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions on this discussion?
No.
Motion by,
Right, I move that we approve policy 6325, the revisions to that policy on procurement, federal grants, and funds.
you,
I'll second.
and seconded by Corey. No further discussion? All in favor of accepting this policy as revised, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 3-0, Lynn.
You?
Flying right along so far, guys. Okay. Get to the next one. Legal counsel 0172.
So
This is the one we had a question of at our Board meeting, yes.
Correct. So last month, we discussed this update, this recommended legal update, update to the legal counsel policy, where it talks about the authority to contact such counsel for legal advice or assistance on behalf of the district. And I think that that's an important sentence as I listened to the conversation the other night, talking about, this whole policy talks about, the protection of the representation of the school district, and the board as a whole is an extension of that, shall normally be that of the board president and superintendent unless otherwise specified by the board. And so I was asked to come back to committee to discuss it. So
any ideas? Corey?
Yeah, I looked at this carefully. It makes sense. It doesn't just limit the board to hire a firm for just the district. It can allow the board to hire a firm for just the board or the district or both, which is fine. And I know we did talk about it. I don't remember who talked about it at the school board meeting. Yeah, I completely agree that requests for having advice granted should go through the board president or the superintendent, I think is what it says.
Yep.
It just makes sense. Otherwise, I can call our law firm and speak for 5 hours and the district gets a great big bill. So yeah, I think it makes sense and I support it.
The way we did it, we had it last week.
Yeah.
This isn't reworded again, is
No,
it?
there's
This
no-
is the way we had it last week.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure I'm clear with you, what you said. You're okay with the way we left it last week? You didn't see a need to change it?
Correct.
That's what I thought, too.
And again, I like the idea that it's shall normally, but there are other circumstances, like, I think of, the things I've seen, where the chair of the Finance Facilities Committee wanted to do a follow-up on something related to a contract that we were involved in addressing with the city. And again, to get permission from the board president or the superintendent to make that contact would be justified.
Yep.
You
Yeah,
know.
so, and again, it's to represent issues of the district. So, when we did the referendum and we had to get that, we had to seek bond counsel, to draft the resolution. We sought a law firm then. That was a lot of the work that Darren and Joe Como and did at the time. We've had some situations that have involved, employee appeals of discipline, for instance, where the board, like Mr. Montillo said, the board has had their own attorney, administration had their attorney, where it gets divided up. But again, all of that stuff gets funneled through the superintendent or the board president, or an extension of by a delegated authority and policy.
I really wasn't sure why this was objected to. Somebody wanted to just see the attorneys on their own without concentrating or contacting the president or the superintendent. That's what somebody wanted, right?
That was the gist of the conversation last
I wasn't
Wednesday.
comfortable with that.
I wasn't understanding it completely either, but it was all about client privilege type of thing is what they were talking about, and the when you'd have that and when you wouldn't have that, and again, I wasn't really understanding what the concern was, but hopefully somebody has better insight than I do.
Corey,
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I think that was the gist of it, Mrs. Voigt. My business, that concern is there. If I have a client in the room or a potential client, and there's a third party, it negates that attorney-client privilege. But when you represent an entity, it's not like that at all.
this is for an entity.
Correct. Yep. Whether it's the board individually or the district industry or both.
So if a person sought permission from the board, it shouldn't be about personal issues. It should be about
Correct.
the entity. I like that
Correct.
term.
Yep, and I think that's part of the filtering through the board president and the superintendent. Because, theoretically, there was just a discussion about the feds giving us guidance on our policies. I could call up Bueller-Vitter and say, give me a position paper on federalism and how it affects local school boards. It takes me 30 seconds to ask for, and that's a month or 2 months of work, and here's your $15,000 bill. So,
Don't.
no.
I don't know where they got their money, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we are looking at essentially the same one we had at the board meeting last week. Yes, last week. And further discussions on this, I'm gathering an agreement right now. So anybody want to move for approval of this as it is?
Sure. I'll move to, I'll move for revision to policy 0172 regarding legal counsel as presented.
Second it.
Second by Diane. Further discussion?
No.
Seeing none. All in favor of accepting 0172 as it's been revised, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 3-0, Lynn.
Thank you.
Double the math, you can't lick your finger.
That's true.
Okay. This is a policy 2460, programs for students with disabilities. This is a change, right?
This is the addition.
Yes.
So the policy title has changed from
Oh, I
special
see.
education to programs for students with disabilities, and that's a recommended change, and it's generally accepted language through all of special education. So it fits just in how it's the common terminology now. But the addition is, and it's just to inform the general public, but also the board, that the district adopts the DPI Special Education Model Forms and Policies and Procedures Manual as the board's official policy in all practices and procedures relating to the education of children with disabilities in the school district. We have adopted this manual twice in my time here through the last revisions that were put out by the DPI. The reason we do that is the DPI, the federal government comes up with their IDEA, Wisconsin implements the IDEA plus other areas in Chapter 118, and then they pass those directives down to school districts through either the state statute, the federal language, or DPI rulings on different things. So you get the DPI rulings for a complaint, or you get a DPI bulletin on how to treat a certain area. By being in line with that, we know then that we're in line with how the state and the federal government are asking us to operate. If we go off and try to do this on our own, Mr. Montijo mentioned before a $15,000 bill from the attorneys. It would cost that times 10, I think, in order to come up with our own procedure manual. So it's best for us just to adopt what the state does. It keeps us current with things, and so that we are not having to do this very in-depth internal review all of the time. We get the manual, we look at it, we make sure that our staff are updated on it, as are our procedures.
And that's been successful in the last couple of revisions?
It has been, yes.
Okay. Diane?
So there isn't a new manual right now. This is just the language of this policy saying that we will approve it whenever a new manual is available.
Correct. We would be bringing that forward through the Teaching and Learning Committee. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And then in the context of board docs, we would have access to the entire manual then
We would have it linked to policy. It's a very substantial manual.
That's what I'm guessing. I wouldn't want to, would you print it all out?
Yeah, no. We would keep it electronic, and in the link then we would put into policy. So
Okay. So I move that we approve the revisions to policy
Yeah, I just put mine over too.
2460, programs for students with disabilities,
You?
as presented.
I'll second.
Seconded by Corey. Further questions or discussion?
No.
None? So I'll ask for a vote on approval of 2460 as presented. Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 3-0. Thank you.
May I ask a question?
Please.
So I'm understanding that in addition to the policy, next month, Diane, you want to see no.
No, I'm just saying whenever we would review the policy, we would see the whole thing in board docs rather than getting a copy
Oh.
of the hundreds of pages that it might
Yeah,
In
be.
the in the future.
In the future.
Got
Yeah,
it.
totally.
Understood. Thank you for
Yeah.
clarifying.
Okay, all right. Legitimate question. That gets us to tobacco. We have 5512 and 7434 here. I believe we will still want to deal with those separately though, right? As far as They're not identical worded, are they?
Correct. They're not identical policies, but
They go
they're
together.
very similar in what they're
Yeah,
trying to address.
that's why they're grouped here. There's a lot of stuff in that 5512.
It was essentially a complete rewrite. It was recommended by the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, and it helps us capture nicotine and tobacco in all of its forms now. When I first started out in administration, we talked about cigarettes. Now we talk about vaping and Juul and every possible delivery system. It talks about the district not participating in advertising with or endorsement from anybody who's selling tobacco. Then it
And
provides the exemption, where
in a class situation where we want to present the
correct. We have
fact that it's here and it's not good for you.
we have the ability for education with this policy. We also have, the exception for somebody, for instance, who needs a nicotine patch, who's
yeah.
trying to quit smoking.
And
And the exemption for the history and purpose of traditional tobacco as used by Native Americans and American Indian communities.
yeah, that was allowed in there, wasn't it?
That's the third paragraph.
I'm sorry, where was it?
There's the third paragraph under the exemptions.
Okay.
And what this policy is trying to capture, one, it's the language around tobacco, and two, it's the areas that school districts have had to try to address dealing with nicotine and tobacco type products, where you rent your baseball facility like we do from the city, and you have people who show up there because it's city property. They'll use their vape pen or whatever it might be. So this does capture the extension of the school property to anything that we're using at that time.
Any question, Diane?
I found this the most educational policy that I was reading. Literally it was all the green of the new and out with the old in the
Yeah.
red, and so many changes. This is the reviewed in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, but there's so many new things that keep evolving. I think
New
it's smart
stuff.
for them to say the kind of catch-all and the things we don't know about yet, the types of forms that it would take, that we don't even know about yet that would still fit in this category. I thought the imitations were quite interesting, and the fact that no candy cigarettes, no bubblegum cigars, no, some of the kinds of things that the beef jerky shredded to look like, chew, et cetera. I was totally unaware of all those different variations that we need to be aware, that we do need to be aware of, and
Yeah,
make sure
there's
that aren't being used in the schools.
There was there's a new TV ad that shows the various types of vaping type products, just using that as an example, a belt that also doubles as a vape pen. If you're familiar with the water packs, they put the camelbacks, a similar type thing in a backpack where the hose goes from the backpack around to the front and it doubles as a vape pen. It really is. It's turning into a situation that becomes very difficult to manage because the industry is essentially assisting in the hiding of the product. Cigarettes used to be cigarettes. It was pretty cut and dry. A bottle of beer was a bottle of beer. It was pretty cut and dry. The creative kids would put the alcohol in the soda bottle and then bring it to school, which again, it was pretty easy to manage that administratively because you could smell it, you could see it. Some of the products that you're seeing now, you could have a cell phone, a dummy cell phone that doubles as a vape or something. And that's what we try to manage now in our schools, which is why these policies are a little bit broader than what.
Kind of a shame, but it's true.
It is. It's the industry has targeted youth.
Yeah.
And there are class action lawsuits, I believe, out there going after some of these industries, these companies, because of how effective they've been at getting kids hooked on the stuff.
The flavors they choose to use and.
Corey?
Just a question. I understand, if a student violates this or it's on school property, what the punishment mechanisms are there and other policies. But how do we deal with, and I'm not trying to shoot a hole in this, I like this, someone coming onto city property that the school district's renting and smoking in the stands?
because we are renting it, it's an extension. It's part of our premise, which is, you'll see that in 7434. If we are leasing it, it's our premise, it's our rule, which covers the baseball field then, during a school-sponsored baseball game. Now, if Carroll's playing there, whatever Carroll decides, if the city baseball team's playing there, it's whatever the city baseball team applies. But if North High School is using that as their facility, then it becomes North High School's facility, and we can
North High School is at the city property.
That the city property,
And it's our rules.
Then our rules apply, yes.
So essentially, if someone is doing that that's not under the jurisdiction because they're a student, staff member, whatever, it could be trespassing unless they.
It could be trespassing. It could be a violation of the, we like on the outside of our buildings, you can see what the municipal penalty is for smoking on school property.
Okay.
The same thing then could be applied.
At our football, baseball stadiums, the rule is out. You don't come in, the public doesn't come in and smoke.
Right.
Isn't that's the way I read it?
That's what it is, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you.
And in practice, that's not the situation we often deal with in practice. The situation that, our data shows is the kids are sneaking around with the vape pen or the Juul or whatever it might be. That's the thing that we face, even at the baseball field and everywhere else.
Sure.
Okay. Motion on, we can vote on both of these at the same time unless you have something separate, I guess.
They're
Now,
very different, but they're related, so that's, I was just wondering.
I think that's why we
I was
grouped
gonna ask
them.
what our motion should be separately, or should,
yeah, we're maintaining equity. I mean, it's the same stuff.
yeah. So I'll make a motion then to approve the revisions to policy 5512 on the use of tobacco, nicotine, and related products by students, and policy 7434, use of tobacco and nicotine on school premises, as presented.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Seconded by Corey. Further discussion? Okay, I'll ask for a vote then. All in favor of accepting the revised policies as listed, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? 3-0, Lynn.
Thank you.
Okay. And eligibility of resident and non-resident students, policy 5111.
Oops, did we forget to spell it?
Lost track.
Unmanned?
I must have forgot that one. Okay. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I saw that the unmanned drone was on the agenda. Are we,
70,
Glenn, did I pass that one up? I did, didn't I? I'm sorry.
oh, I didn't mean,
Let's do it.
okay. I didn't mean to jump. I thought my agenda was
I lost
passed.
that one when I was doing this packaging of the whole list, and it's in my hand as a piece of paper. So
There we go.
thank you for calling that up. I'm sorry, small unmanned aircraft systems.
We didn't get any questions at the full board on this. We've talked about this for a while since we've been working with Neola for going on 4 years now. This policy has been talked about and in development that long. So they finally came up with a good drones policy that we have in front of you tonight for approval. We did link the administrative guidelines, which we used to refer to as Todd's rule, and now we call them Jim's rules.
Aren't you happy, Jim?
But that just supports kind of the details of how we would go about implementing.
Yeah, there's quite a bundle there in the guidelines.
There is, yes.
And there's a lot to be careful of. When you think about it, there's a lot of potential for damage of these things.
Yep.
And some of them are pretty, it's not 10 feet.
Yeah.
So, is there anything in here that anybody had interesting issues with? I don't know that we've had much of it flying around. Oh, I'm sorry, Diane.
I'm just, again, when we bring it up to talk about, I think it's important to realize that you need authorization to be able to use a drone on school property, and really stress that for the audience that's listening, and that you have to be at least 16 for remote pilot certification to drive, whatever you call, maneuver a drone. So I thought those are, I think, two things that I thought were really important takeaways, that somebody under than 16 shouldn't even be thinking about it,
Yeah, it is regulated by the FAA to a large degree, and if a drone would be on our property for a legitimate purpose. It would be to photograph something. It would be to scan the roof of a building. It would be to take pictures for our construction project. We've talked about that before. It's not a casual thing that we would have on our properties, and by having these restrictions on how you can do it, it would prevent. It may not prevent, but it would give us some enforcement over the person who casually shows up and wants to fly a drone around our schools.
It's like coming to our grounds and wanting to fly a kite, but this is not the same.
Right.
And they just need to realize that.
Well, yeah, there's hazards involved with these, particularly as they get bigger. I mean, some of them do.
Yeah, I agree completely. Plus, there's a huge privacy concern. I know there's a
What?
big privacy concern.
Oh, yes.
There's a football game. Someone could fly a drone over the other coaches. They could harass the other teams. We have little kids out there. Some interesting individuals trying to look at
Oh,
kids.
I didn't even thought of those.
I mean, there's a whole lot of problems that could happen. But then you balance that against the innocent kid coming out wants to fly it in this big, attractive field. I get it, but there has to be rules to prevent that. So I agree.
Okay, 7440.03. Any further questions, discussion? Somebody want to take a shot at motion?
Okay, I move that we approve the new policy number 7440.03 and the related guidelines on small unmanned aircraft systems, also called drones.
Thank you. Seconded by Corey.
Yes, please.
Discussions? Okay, all in favor of accepting, I turned the number over again, 7440.03, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the guidelines, by the way. Okay? 3-0.
Thank you.
Now, back to where I was trying to go before. Eligibility of resident and non-resident students. This is a revised policy, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It adds item F to it. Students enrolled in a home-based private education program in grades kindergarten through 8 who meet the minimum standards for admission to a course offered by the district shall be accepted into the district's educational program for up to 2 classes if the board determines there is sufficient space in the classes. So essentially homeschooled students could take 2 classes, grade K through 8 with us if there is space.
Joe, I had a question. I think it's in the G part, it talks about the pay, the tuition, et cetera, et cetera. What about transportation?
No.
We do not provide transportation if they're following this rule.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, that's where I was kind of thinking, because that could put a rather strange burden on us in some cases. Corey?
Thank you. I read this, but I'm trying to skim it again to make sure I didn't miss it. It looks like the board determines there's sufficient space in the classroom.
That's when we do the open enrollment projections. So if the board declares at 5th grade that there are no seats available, then we wouldn't be able to accept a student into a class. And likewise, we may have space at Hadfield's 5th grade, but Rose Glen is full, and the parent may request to go to Rose Glen, but we say there's no space at Rose Glen. There is space over at Hadfield if you want to take the art class or whatever it might be.
And this uses your statistics on open enrollment.
Correct.
As the rule, the guided rule, okay.
Right.
Go.
I'm sorry, just probably being overly particular or not understanding this. Should we just put in the board, or is it's designee? I don't think it would ever come up, but.
The board, the designee of it would go from what the board approves, and the board approves the open enrollment space. And then from there, it's administrative discretion, because you're saying we have this much space in the district, but not this much space at each school. So we, using open enrollment as the example, you can't apply to Waukesha to go to Lowell, but you can apply to Waukesha, and if we have space at Lowell, we could accommodate you. So we handle the administrative task of it, but you guys do set those seat requirements.
But it doesn't actually come to us, say, student A gets to go in class. Okay, good.
We handle that.
So when again, in the course of a year, when do you do that open enrollment statistics for us?
January board meeting?
That's done in January. I thought we had it recently. Okay. Diane, you had something?
I do. The only time, I was going to just sort of clarify with what Corey was saying, the only time the board directly does it is if it's an expulsion, and then the board would have to approve allowing this student that has been expelled to come
Correct.
into
For an expelled
our
student,
district.
if we desired to enroll an expelled student, this board could rehear the case and overturn another board's decision. Administratively, we wouldn't be able to do that part.
Okay. Okay. Any further questions on, what is number, 5111?
Just another comment. I think the idea of allowing the homeschooled child to be eligible for 2 classes within our buildings, especially with the pandemic circumstances that we're just going through, I think is, again, a really important thing to share with the community, to know that if they've chosen to not be involved, like at a 4K level or something, that they can, kind of turn that around at this point and be in for a couple classes, without, no questions asked. It's part of our policy for eligibility. And I think that communicating that to the community is important.
Okay. All right. I'd be seeking a motion on 5111.
It's just a discussion item this month.
Oh, I'm sorry, it
That's
is, isn't
okay.
it?
It'll come back
The
next
part I
month for
can't see
approval.
on here.
That's okay.
Okay, discussion information for a subsequent meeting. Excellent. Now, let me get back on. It should bring me, I think, near the end, right?
The last one.
Any recommendations for future meetings? Joe, any idea where we are looking ahead?
Got a handful of them coming in, and then we're getting ready for the June, what would be the June update then, correct?
So we will have something for next month.
We will have something for next month, bring us into April. I'm not promising, but we may be off in May, just depending on what the business is, and then I think we'd start being back at it.
It comes
June.
in waves.
Did have a period, I think it was this year, where we actually canceled a couple months because we didn't have anything on the docket, but we will have stuff in June. They
Okay,
will-
that
that's part of
happens.
the semi-annual update.
Part of the job. Wow, that was moving along here. With that, I see nothing else. This meeting will be adjourned. Our next meeting is April 20th. Am I right? Right. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.